Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Hempel. I'm the fire chief for Doña County. It's probably my greatest honor to serve not only these firefighters, but all of you, the members of our communities. So I'd like to start out with a quote from Chief Edward Crocker. And so this is from 1908. He was the fire chief for the city of New York. And he said that firefighting is a hazardous occupation. It's dangerous on the face of it, tackling a burning building. The risks are plain. Consequently, when a man or a woman becomes a firefighter, their greatest act of bravery has already been accomplished. It's not running into the building that's on fire. It's not rescuing somebody who's been hurt or trapped in a motor vehicle crash. It's taking that step to accept those risks and to know going into it that it's dangerous. So tonight we honor these cadets that have decided to take this challenge and become a firefighter. It may be the largest, most influential step in their lives. And for the past weeks, they've trained hard. Classrooms, in the field, on the fire engines. Many hours of hard work have gone towards learning how to respond to emergencies, extinguish fires, contain hazardous materials, and save lives. The classroom work was challenging to their minds, and the skill training was physically demanding. It wasn't easy, but neither is their job. So with that, I would like to first recognize our county manager, Fernando Macias, is in here. We also have Mayor Salas from Columbus, New Mexico. We're quite honored that the Columbus Fire Department had contacted us a while back and said, we're really interested in learning and training with you guys. And I said, absolutely, we welcome everyone. We've had firefighters from Otero County and from, I believe from Sierra County before, and now we welcome our brothers and sisters from Luna County. So thank you for sharing your people with us. I'd like to open the doors and invite the graduates from Cadet Class 22 to enter. Thank you, Tambry. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Cadet Class 22. While everybody's standing, we'll have the Star Spangled Banner presented by our county IT. Thank you, everyone. You may be seated.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Eric Crispin, Deputy Fire Chief. Gentlemen, would you please remove your hats? And if you would, please join me in bowing your heads. God in heaven, it is our privilege to invite you here as the guest of honor on this graduation ceremony. It is our request that you would bless the graduating class, number 22. But more than that, and of first importance, we desire that you would be here with us this evening. Among other things, O God, you are the creator of the human mind, which you modeled in some fashion after your own great mind. Though we acknowledge that your thoughts are infinitely higher and more profound than ours, we glory in the notion that we may, on our own level, think some of your thoughts after you in this place this evening. I ask on behalf of those gathered here that you would indeed bless each and every one of us and the graduates that are here this evening. Give them the grace to make the difference for the good throughout Doña County and whomever they serve. And now, may you be pleased with what is done here this evening. Thank you for your presence. It is in the name above all others that we ask. Amen. This time, I'd like to call Captain Enciso forward. He will be acknowledging those that helped him participate in the academy.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, firefighters. Good evening, coworkers, and good evening, family members. We just take a couple moments. This was the 4th academy we taught in 2018. With a lot of training hours, a lot of sacrifice from all the cadets from all 4 academies. So I'd like to thank them for their dedication and consistency and perseverance. I'd like to thank their family for supporting them. And I would like to thank our instructors, co-instructors, and assistants that helped us throughout the academy. We could not do this kind of workload without having that continuous support. And I'd like to thank administration for, it consumes a lot of resources, whether it's financial or physical resources. So thank you. And most of all, I'd like to thank the taxpayers because we couldn't do what we do without the taxpayers supporting us. Thank you all. I'd like to introduce Chief Crispin. He's going to move forward.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to present to you and invite forward this evening our guest speaker. But before he steps forward, I'd like to share a little bit about our guest speaker this evening. Our guest speaker this evening is Chaplain Carr with the Doña County Sheriff's Department. Chaplain Carr started as a volunteer law enforcement chaplain in 1991. Some of you probably weren't around, but before going on to graduate from Dasso's First Academy in 1995, Chaplain Carr has served law enforcement and emergency responder community throughout New Mexico since 1995, both at the federal, the state, and local agency level. Chaplain Carr currently serves as a deputy with the Doña County Sheriff's Office, assigned to the chaplain full-time position. A major part of what Chaplain Carr does, and a lot of people don't realize, is he heads up the New Mexico State Crisis Support Team. He's currently serving as the president, going on 6 years. Ladies and gentlemen, it's important that you understand that when the responders go out and answer the call for service to provide aid to those that are in need, it's individuals like Chaplain Carr that look out for them, that say a prayer for them, that keep them in his thoughts. And he's there for us when we hit a low or a down moment. He's there for us to lift us up as responders, remind us that we did all we could, and to encourage us to continue on. My hope for the graduating class this evening is that they befriend Chaplain Carr, but also that they never need his service. But if they do, he's going to be there for you. It is my pleasure again to introduce our guest speaker this evening, Chaplain Carr.
It's truly an honor and a privilege to be with you here this evening, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to address you. Not too common to have a cop come and address a bunch of firefighters, is it? Well, I have a little bit of a connection, and that is my eldest son. I have 5 children, 16 grandkids, if you can believe that, and I can't keep track of them all. I couldn't tell you I almost don't know their names as much as birth dates, but in reality, my eldest son is a full-time firefighter with Las Cruces Fire Department. And he's constantly telling me, Dad, you don't have any idea what we're doing, what we do. And so I'm constantly trying to learn more and more of what it is that firefighters face on a regular basis. In reality, in doing some research in preparation for trying to speak to you and what I would choose to share with you this evening, after 27 years of working within the emergency responder community, I sure learned some very interesting things about firefighters. The most recent statistics that I have are only about 4 years old. But at that time, across the country, we had 1,134,000 firefighters in our nation. They served 27,000 different departments and 58,000 different fire stations. But the most shocking statistic that I learned in my research was this. Of those 1,134,000 firefighters, only 31% of them are full-time. 69% of all those firefighters in our nation are volunteer. That's incredible. We are so utterly dependent upon our volunteer firefighters. You fill a gap that no one else can fill. Interestingly, too, I found that when I consider volunteers and the nature of volunteerism, most of our armed services special forces are manned by none other than those who were not conscripted or even said, hey, we want you to step into this position. But no, they're manned by those who have volunteered for the position. I'm not to say that they don't get paid, but they have stepped up, and from their heart, they have chosen saying, I want to serve. And that is what characterizes every one of you. So they make up the majority of the most elite groups in our country that serve. However, as Chief Hempel mentioned initially, there are indeed dangers associated with the job. That goes with any emergency responder situation. Just as an average, over the past 5 or 6 years, the annual average number of fatalities that the fire services have suffered throughout our nation is around 102 as an average. 102 firefighters lose their lives every year in the performance of their duties, serving our communities, serving us. We know that law enforcement also succumbs to much in the way of line of duty deaths. I'm sure you've probably seen headlines just in the past week. It seems to be, again, another rash of law enforcement deaths. It's just very difficult for us to conceive and grasp. So we know that all emergency responders face the challenges and the safety concerns in regard to what they do, how they serve us. But I have something that is very sobering to speak to you about tonight. Even though the reality of the fact that many of our fellow co-workers, whether it be fire, sometimes EMS, law enforcement, suffer line of duty deaths, do you know that there's something that's even more dangerous to those who serve in the emergency responder services than the line of duty deaths? Do you know what it is? It's you yourself. What I mean by that is this. We literally lose more police officers and more firefighters to suicide than we do to line of duty deaths. Did you hear what I said? We are losing more firefighters and law enforcement by their own hand than we are losing in line of duty deaths. My dear friends, something's wrong with that. Desperately wrong. My involvement with the state crisis support team has been probably 16, 17 years, which has put me in the position of having the opportunity to serve emergency responders, not just law enforcement, but fire and EMS as well, across our entire state. Our state crisis support team is actually a team that has existed for 30 years in our state. It is one of the premier crisis support team or critical incident stress management teams in our nation. It's one of the premier teams in that it still receives state funds for its existence, for reimbursement, for travel. It's all manned by, guess what? Volunteers. People who are committed to serving emergency responders. That team exists and has a very important role. I'd like to read, if I may, it's just a few sentences. It's a short biographical description of one emergency responder. Courtney Smith, age 54, drove to a desolate county road on a cold winter morning. It was 3 hours from the city where she had worked as an emergency responder for 28 years. Courtney pulled to the side of the road and sent a text to her 3 children. She told them that she was proud of them and that she loved them. Then she walked out into the field beside the road. She pulled out a pistol and succumbed to the memories that had been nagging her for years of shift work, responding to countless horrific calls, the flashbacks of a mother's wail when she was told that her child had died, the visions of bodies mangled in vicious car wrecks, the memories of all the suicides, the smells and the sounds would plague her no more. When I read that, I'm still moved because I deal with people for whom that is very real. And if you understand, there were just a couple of sentences in there that were key, and that is the number of years that she served, the countless memories, call after call after call, varying situations. And we call that cumulative, layer after layer after layer. And it affects all of us who serve in emergency services. All of us. Some of us, some serve varying agencies and will have it compounded even more. But the reality of the fact is that each and every one of you who serve in this capacity as an emergency responder have the potential of suffering the same cumulative stress effect. Some of Courtney's co-workers basically said that she seemed to handle the stress that she faced on a regular basis. But their commentary was this: it was all a facade. It was all a facade. She knew that if she showed any weakness, that she might be pulled off the truck and possibly lose her job. She thought that she might lose the respect of her partner, her boss, her coworkers, and that was even more intimidating than the idea, well, of going to counseling and maybe trying to get some help. Emergency responders face all kinds of stressors, and I don't want to spend time this evening belaboring the various things. I hope I've painted enough of a picture for you that will help you to understand that there are specifics that violent deaths and a variety of things, organizational stressors, the nature of the job. Yeah, sometimes our supervisors are even a worse stressor at times. But you know what? We have to learn to work with them and under them and honor them in their positions. There are issues of burnout that affect us all. And yes, we hear that watchword PTSD, the acronym, post-traumatic stress disorder. But we're changing that to understand that it's no longer to be called a disorder, but rather post-traumatic stress illness. Because you know, you can heal from an illness. You don't heal from a disorder. And we're seeing many people treated and come back from truly suffering such traumatic stress. Well, it's true that emergency responders have a huge reservoir of traumatic memories to draw from and that plague them from time to time. Unfortunately, there's often a mentality in sometimes some of our old guard. Yeah, I'm holding a mirror up to myself here when I say that. The old guard, the old mentality, the way we always used to do it, we always managed, we did just fine. How many phrasings can you think of that you've heard over the years? If it's too hot in the kitchen, get out. You know, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. Or whatever it may be, we use different word pictures to say, if you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be doing the job. You know, it's unfortunate that some of that old guard mentality was lived out by some of the older supervisors, the ones who worked hard and suffered much, but the tendency for them to maybe come up to a young graduate or a new cadet or a new firefighter that's been on for a year or two. And if you can imagine it, we see the mentality of that supervisor coming up at a briefing and saying, "Son, you're not going to need counseling after that call last night, are you?" And what kind of a response do you expect from that young firefighter or that young law enforcement officer? "Oh, no, sir." And that supervisor has just set that young person up for failure in his career and in his life. There was a survey that was given that actually covered thousands of emergency responders, and I was challenged by some of the responses that I read in this. I'll just share a few things with you. Some comments from this survey that illustrate the various critiques about trying to get some kind of help for critical incident stress or stress management. This is what some of the responders said back. They were afraid of being fired or were not allowed to have critical incident stress management at our service. Another said, "I asked for help and ended up losing my 22-year career." That is an absolute heartbreak. There may be more to that story, but that mentality hangs like a dark cloud over all emergency responders situations and agencies. Sometimes we think that if we show that something would affect us, that we're weak. Oh, my dear friends, I worry about us if it doesn't affect us, because you are not robots. You are human. And I tell you, folks, when my house is on fire, God forbid, I want people that feel to come and to be there to help me and my family at that time. Others said they asked for help and they were laughed at by coworkers. One was told to get back to work. I was told what I signed up for, so I should just deal with it. One emergency responder said, it wasn't even offered, though we all thought it should be, meaning critical and stress management. One coworker stated that it didn't even bother him, that child's death, and that if it bothered me, that maybe I wasn't mentally fit enough to be on the truck. Those are the kinds of callous, thoughtless words that sometimes are spoken. And sometimes we do speak without thinking or understanding. My challenge to you tonight is basically I'd like to share with you just a couple of basic principles of what I would encourage you to do. And not just you 15 here, but others in the audience that have been doing this for varying amounts of time. And then there's some really old dogs over here that have been doing it forever. You got Moses and Elijah and a few of those folks, older than dirt. But the principles are the same. What should we, and everything I say to you, I'm holding the mirror up to myself, reminding myself of these very things. You think I'm not plagued by these same challenges? My involvement is with many different agencies, many different officers, many different circumstances. It is indeed a challenge. Your beginning of your fire career may actually be just a jumping in point for you to become full-time in a variety of areas. Maybe it'll be in EMS. I found that for my son, he loved the medical aspect of things almost more than everything. He eats that up. I actually have 2 sons, and I never exposed them to that. So this may well be a jumping off place for you to get into it full-time. Who knows? We may get some of you as police officers. That would be a delight. We need them desperately. Oh, somebody's looking back. You already talked about that, have you? Good. All right, come talk to me later. But the reality of the fact that even though you may be just beginning and it may lead you into full-time circumstances, these principles are crucial. First and foremost, your family. I cannot understate that. You must guard your hearts, your minds, your eyes in every way, shape, and form. You must dedicate yourselves to your homes, to your spouses. I tell you, I teach at both city and county academies on an annual basis, and that is one of the things that I try to impress upon the law enforcement cadets that are in those academies. Because quite frankly, when you go through a police academy, and that's full-time for 26 weeks, and I don't know how these kids make it anymore, but they do. They're dedicated. I mean, all you're doing during that whole time is worrying about polishing your shoes, cleaning your weapon, pressing your uniform, retyping your notes, studying, and just trying to survive. But in reality, I have to remind these young cadets that you cannot ignore your spouses for 26 weeks or even for 6 weeks, because you'll come to the end of the academy and you won't have a family anymore. You will lose them, and that will only set the stage for the future. You might have a spouse that is very tenacious and willing to hang in there, but if you set that bad example where the job comes first, you will not survive at home. I tell those young cadets, you know what? You can face anything on the street just so long as things are good at home. But if they're not good at home, you can't do this job. So one of my gifts to you tonight, the first being these few words of an age-old man, is I have a box over here of a very practical gift. I don't know, how many of you are married? Come on, let's see them higher than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, only 4. How many of you would like to be married? No, but, Ladies, at least you see the one hand that went up. He's the only brave one in the entire group. Good for you, sir. It's a norm. It's God's norm for you to be married. That's the norm. I trust you'll grow into that, the rest of you that weren't willing to raise your hands. But one of the best things you can do, when's the last time you read a marriage book? Never. And yet we train for everything except sometimes the most important. I have a box of marriage books. It's one of my favorites right over here. And I would encourage you, you don't have to be married because it is a great pre-marriage book. It will do more for you in preparation for a lifetime family dedication, husband, wife, than just about anything. I would encourage you, there's no pressure. I'm not going to stuff them in your shirt. They won't fit anyway. But they are over here in the box, and we'll certainly make those available to you. They're there for you to take. I would encourage you, please consider taking one. The second thing I would challenge you with is this. Please avoid the pitfalls that we just mentioned. The tendency for the old guard to have that mentality that is, I'm Superman. Nothing bothers me. Nothing affects me. Or to believe the lie. Do not believe the lie that my coworkers will think I'm weak if I let anybody know that that call bothered me. It's been less than a month, hasn't it, Chief, that we had the fatal fire in Sunland Park? Just a few weeks, really? That involved a number of fire agencies, a number of law enforcement, and medical personnel. The state team, and Chief Hempel was gracious to reach out, contact the state team, and we had some peers that came, and one mental health person, to lead that intervention. It's a very simple, we get together and we talk about the event. We talk about what happened, what each person's part was. It's not hocus pocus. It's not psychotherapy. It's not touchy-feely. It's just friends who work in this field helping friends. And I'll tell you, that fire was a horror. I wasn't on that particular scene, but I've been on a number of your scenes over the years. But that scene was a nightmare, and each person had a piece to the puzzle to add to give us the fuller picture of what was involved. And one of the healthiest things that you can do is just be willing to talk about what happened with your peers, those who were there, who worked it with you. It's not rocket science. It means we just simply need to care for one another, knowing that we're all in the same boat together. We all face the same horrors. We may respond differently, and that's fine. Some things may not bother me. Other things are catastrophic. We're all different. But the need for regular self-care by pairing ourselves up with our coworkers. Please don't buy into the lie that people will think you're weak. And even if they say something stupid like that, don't believe them. Don't believe that lie. You are human. And thirdly, please take advantage of the resources that are available to you. As we read about some of the critiques that some emergency responders in this survey said, we never even had any kind of critical incident stress management help. We thought we should have, but we didn't. Well, folks, I can tell you that that is not the case with our county or with our state. There are many opportunities to receive help from people who do what you do. I love what Deputy Chief Paul Bierce from Rio Rancho says. It's people that have chewed the same dirt that we have. Those are the ones that we connect with. You know, there's nothing truer than that. It's the folks that have walked in it, have been in it, and have seen it and tasted it, and they know what it's like. You can trust those folks. You can trust these people because they care about you, and I'm grateful for them. So be acquainted with and ask about what kind of help there is. Freely acknowledge the fact that you may be struggling with some aspect of that most recent call. So take advantage of the opportunities. Those who don't are the ones who tend to force that you as the new generation into an antiquated and harmful worldview. An illustration that I use is, I'm sure many of you still remember what pressure cookers were. It was kind of the poor man's microwave, right? That's what I grew up with. And they're very useful. It's an incredible tool, and they're hermetically sealed, and they all, if you're familiar with it, with a little bit of water, and you put your food in there, and it cooks it not only under heat, but the pressure, because you're containing that steam there. And yet there's a little weight on top of the cover with a small hole about. And as long as when it heats up, you're familiar with the sound. You know, it heats up and it's beginning to let off some of that steam, and it will start to jiggle. And then the pressure will be relieved for a little, and it'll build up again, and you'll hear it. I grew up with that. My mom used to cook crabs. I grew up on an island in Florida. Did you know that crabs scream when you throw them in boiling water? I still have nightmares about that. Anyway, I get off. The pressure cooker serves as such an incredible word picture for us, because we face the pressures of working in emergency services. And it's safe, as long as that steam is coming out of that vent, we know things are okay with that pressure cooker. But if that stops, if that hole gets plugged up, what do we have? We've got a bomb. And the truth is that that pressure will come out one way or another, either a little at a time, and that's the picture of us dealing with each event that we may be struggling with or helping others. We deal with that a little at a time, and then it never builds up. But the tendency we have is, oh, we'll just stuff it down and stuff it down. No, it didn't bother me. I'll stuff it down. And it's like plugging up that hole. And eventually, my dear friends, over time, it will come out. But it comes out all at once. And when it does, it's very destructive. Or, as we've been talking about tonight, even self-destructive. So please hear my words. Please hear what I'm trying to share with you. Guard your hearts, guard your minds, care for yourselves, care for one another. Stay connected with your people and be available to one another. I'd like to close with one verse of Scripture. I had a bunch of them, but I figured you didn't want me to read the whole Old Testament. So, God's view of serving. Came across this verse, and it really struck a chord in my heart. So I'm from Isaiah 58, verse 10. And if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, and that's exactly what you do in emergency responses, in emergency services. You seek to reach out and meet the needs of those who can't take care of themselves. You are there to step in. If you spend yourselves and satisfy the needs of others, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like the noonday. That's what God has to say about you and your service. It will shine brightly. And I tell you, my dear friends, there's no greater blessing than to know that you are doing exactly what it is that God wants you to do in serving others. I'm so grateful for you and for your dedication, for all of you across our nation that serve so diligently. Thank you for who you are, for what you do, for your character, for your sacrifice. May God bless you.
Now we're going to move, thank you, guest speaker. Thank you, Chaplain Carr. We're going to move forward to our video presentation. The intention of the video is those 88 hours the firefighters spent training to display to you as family members that we were actually out doing some fire ground training and not watching movies all day, training tower. So Academy 22, if you would please stand and move to your forward-facing seats. We'll move on to our oath of service. Chief Crispin will do the introduction. So if you would, Academy 22, please take your crowd-facing seats.
So now that we've had a very moving speech by our guest speaker, Chaplain Carr, thank you, sir. Thank you for the words and the encouragement to our class. It is my privilege to now introduce the Honorable Judge Kent Wingenroth. It's time to get to business. It's time to have these individuals take the oath and prepare to fully serve. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you an individual who I've known for a number of years. The Honorable Judge Wingenroth is a retired state police officer. We won't hold that against him. This is just proof that with our guest speaker this evening and our retired state police officer, that the fire service, we adapt, we overcome, and we get along with everybody. So Judge Wingenroth has been a husband to his bride for 39 years. The judge and his bride have 2 children and 2 awesome grandchildren. Not yet. Judge Wingenroth also has a couple of 4-legged friends residing in his home. He continues to serve the community as one of our judges and has been for the past 13 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the Honorable Judge Wingenroth to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambro, for standing. It's one of my basketball playing buddies. But first of all, it's an honor to be here. I want to congratulate the volunteer firemen that are about to become full-fledged volunteer firemen. And as a retired state cop, I did my whole career here in Cruces. So I worked with these individuals from Mesquite, Santa Teresa, Chaparral, La Union, Chamberino. I worked Sunland Park when it wasn't even incorporated. So, you know, you guys provided a big service to us as state cops, as I hope we did to the volunteer firemen. So thank you very much for your service. And I wish you, first of all, I want to congratulate you, and I wish you a safe and rewarding career. And it's quite an honor to be a volunteer. You know, a lot of people don't volunteer for stuff like when my wife tells me to clean the house, I do not volunteer. I was like, nah, not today. All right, hey, you guys ready? I know I'm ready. I thought you said it was 45 minutes. Jeez. Yeah, hey, no, it's a big moment, guys. So look, I never did the oath. I did oath to police officers. I did oath to other people. Never did an oath to firemen, so work with us. No matter, if it doesn't sound like real smooth, it's still good to go. They're still firemen. All right? So I'm going to have you guys stand up. I'm sure about that. Get my good side. That's the back side. Yeah. All right, this is in humor hour. All right, guys. Hey, congrats. Please raise your right hand. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and that of the state of New Mexico, and that I will obey the laws and ordinances of Doña County, familiarize myself with, and be obedient to the rules and regulations and orders of the Doña County Department of Fire and Emergency Services, and faithfully serve Doña County in the discharge of my duties as a firefighter to the best of my knowledge and ability, so help me God. Hey, give him a round of applause. We're done.
Ladies and gentlemen, so the way we're going to do this evening, to afford you the opportunity to take pictures with your firefighters, I'm going to ask that one of the Academy instructors, Cameron Crispin, come and read each firefighter's name. At that time, what they'll do is they'll step forward, they'll shake Captain Enciso's hand, Chief Hempel's hand, and then they will make their way back where they will sign the oath of office before the Honorable Judge Kent Wingenroth.
Marisol Castorena. Kyle Davis. Abraham Delgado. Nestor Garcia. Timothy Garner Jr. Sean Hulet. Your Honor, the next one won't be signing an oath, but on behalf of Nicole Lawson, Mayor Salas. I don't know, on your end.
I do that every day. Actually, I got to swear. Actually, we have to do it.
Yeah, we can do it afterwards.
Oscar Mendez. Oscar is actually not able to make it with us this evening, but his name has been called. Next, Juancarlos Muñoz. Frank Ortiz. Marco Ortiz. Jonathon Quintana. Andres Ramos. Carlos Rodriguez. And lastly, Jovany Cortez.
Who's the other one that are going to swear in?
We could do it after the. She's at the.
She what?
She's.
Yeah, let me do it now while she's here. Is
Okay.
that her?
Yes.
Yeah, here. No, do you want to come up? You want to do that since you don't feel so good? First. Lawson. So let me say it. Solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, and that I will state of New Mexico, and that I will obey the laws and ordinances of Doña County, and familiarize myself with and obedient to. You get me thinking I gotta sign it. Too late.
Ladies and gentlemen, Fire Academy 22.
As we prepare to conclude the graduation ceremony for graduating class 22, if I could get you to bow your heads, please. Heavenly Father, creator and author of mankind, giver of spiritual grace and divine providence, send down your blessing upon the graduating class, Academy 22, as well as their brothers and sisters throughout the fire and emergency services near and far. Fortify them with your heavenly protection, that they may step forward with mercy and compassion and offer their hand to those in danger and distress. Protect their families. Give us all the patience, judgment, and mercy to do your work. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our graduation ceremony. We would like to ask that you gather in the foyer. You can take pictures with your firefighters. Congratulations. Thank you.